A trip can look perfect while you're planning it. 4 must-see attractions, 3 vibrant neighborhoods, 2 scenic walking routes, 1 postcard-worthy sunset viewpoint, maybe even a quick stop in the charming nearby town on the way. On paper, it looks efficient. You're making the most of the time that you have. You're not wasting any opportunities. You're seeing as much as possible. But once you're actually there, the trip can start to feel different. Less like travel, more like logistics. And trying to see everything begins to change the travel experience. You're checking the map, again, watching the time almost obsessively, calculating whether you can still make it to the next gallery at the other end of the city. And suddenly, the itinerary that looked exciting at home starts to feel exhausting in real life. Even so, planning is still useful. Having structure still matters, but a full itinerary doesn't guarantee a full experience. In this video, we'll look at why overpacked trips can become tiring and how to plan in a way that leaves more space for the experience itself. Most itineraries account for the activity, but they don't always account for what surrounds it. A museum visit might take 2 hours. An entire restaurant reservation might last 90 minutes. A panoramic viewpoint might only take 20, but the activity itself is not the whole cost. There's also getting there, finding the entrance, waiting in line, buying the ticket, figuring out which exit to take, checking the map, finding the right bus stop, platform, or meeting point, deciding whether you have enough time to eat before the next stop, and then doing all of that again. This is the hidden cost beyond the activity, and it's not just the time it takes to move from one place to another, but the attention, patience, and energy required to keep moving. Every extra stop adds another layer to the day. Sometimes that layer is small, sometimes it's worth adding, but it's rarely nothing. And that's where a lot of travel plans become tricky. They seem manageable because each item looks reasonable on its own. One museum, one market, one restaurant, one walk through a nearby neighborhood. But in reality, the day isn't experienced as separate items. It's experienced as a sequence, and the weight of a sequence changes as the day goes on. The fourth activity does not feel the same as the first. The third transfer does not feel the same as the second. The decision you make at 9 o'clock, bright and early in the morning, does not feel the same at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when you're tired, hungry, overheated, jet-lagged, or slightly lost. This is why a plan can be technically possible and still not feel good. A full day on paper can become a fragmented day when put into practice. And sometimes the problem is that the plan ignores how much energy is required to execute that plan. And once a trip becomes mostly about getting to the next thing, it becomes harder to actually experience exactly what you came to see. The strange thing is that overpacked itineraries often feel rewarding. They can even feel responsible. You have limited time. You spent money to get there. You may not know when you'll return, so naturally, you want to make the most of it. And in travel planning, making the most of it often means fitting in as much as possible. It means fitting in one more stop, one more bakery, one more view, one more old quarter. The plan starts to feel more valuable simply because it contains more. And this is reinforced by the way travel is usually presented online. Every place is described as a must-see. Every cafe looks like it's worth visiting. Every viewpoint looks unmissable. Every list seems to imply that if you skip something, you are missing out. So a gap in the itinerary can begin to feel like a problem, a failure to optimize, a sign that you're leaving something on the table. But that same space is often what allows the trip to work. It gives you time to recover, time to notice where you are, a cushion for delays without the whole day collapsing. Time to wander through a cobblestoned alley you didn't plan. Time to sit on a terrace longer because it feels good. Incorporating these things that make a trip feel better is one of the harder parts of travel planning because they often look inefficient before the trip begins. So it's okay to incorporate a slower morning or a flexible afternoon or a meal with nothing scheduled immediately after it. A route that leaves room for weather, crowds, delays, or just being tired. These choices can look like wasted space on paper, but in practice, they often create the conditions that make the trip more enjoyable overall. The overpacked itinerary feels gratifying because it maximizes options, but the trip may feel better when it leaves enough room for those options to actually be enjoyed. So the practical question is, how do I create a good, well-balanced plan? One that has enough structure to reduce decision fatigue and help with prioritization, but enough empty space for the trip to breathe. A useful place to start is with 1 to 2 anchors per day. An anchor could be a museum, a neighborhood, a long meal, a hike, a guided tour, a market. It's something that gives the day shape. Most importantly, these should be things you genuinely care about. Then around those anchors, you can add flexible options, not obligations, options. Things you might do if the day is going well, if the weather cooperates, if you still have energy, if the transport is easy, and if you're actually still interested when the moment arrives. Because when some things are kept as optional instead of must-dos, the plan becomes more flexible, and you stay in control rather than letting the itinerary make decisions for you. Before adding another stop, it can help to ask a few questions, like, what transitions does this create? How much additional energy will this require? What would I have to rush to make this happen? What would I lose if I added this? And would I be okay with making those concessions? Finally, would I still want to do this if I were tired, hungry, delayed, or unfamiliar with the area? The last question is especially useful because planning usually happens in ideal conditions. When you're rested, comfortable, and you have the full map in front of you. Everything is still theoretical, but travel actually happens in real-world conditions. When the train might be late, the weather might change, your feet hurt, the restaurant takes longer than expected, the museum is more crowded than you imagined, you might find somewhere you want to stay longer, or you simply reach the point where another quick stop doesn't feel quick anymore. So when constructing a better itinerary, go beyond just asking, can this thing fit? Ask yourself, will this still feel worthwhile when I'm actually living through the day? That question changes the plan. It makes room for the difference between possible and sustainable. And that difference is often what separates a good trip from a great one. When planning well, deciding what to remove matters as much as deciding what to add. Removing something can feel like a loss, and that can make the process surprisingly difficult. Because you may think, if I skip this museum, I'm wasting the chance. If I don't visit that neighborhood, I'm not exploring the city in the right way. If I leave an afternoon open, I'm not making the most of the trip. But every addition has a trade-off. Adding one more place often means less time somewhere else, less margin, less rest, less attention, less ability to adapt. So a useful planning exercise is to ask, what deserves depth? What would I regret rushing? What would still be enjoyable if I only had a short amount of time? And what is mostly there because I feel like I should include it, but it's not necessarily something I genuinely want to do? That last question can be revealing. A lot of travel plans contain inherited expectations. Things other people say you have to do, things that seem important because they're famous. And sometimes those things are worth it, but a more satisfying trip often comes from distinguishing between what's famous, what's convenient, and what actually matters to you. That doesn't mean ignoring major sites. Rather, it means being honest about the cost of including them. Sometimes the most useful thing you can remove is not an activity, it's the pressure to turn every available hour into proof that the trip was worthwhile. A full itinerary can feel satisfying before the trip begins. It gives the impression that no time is being wasted. Every hour has a purpose, every stop has a reason, every day looks complete. But a trip is not lived on paper. It's lived in movement, in weather, in waiting, in meals, in small delays, in decisions, in the space between plans. And sometimes that space is where the trip becomes memorable. It's where you notice the street you didn't search for, the cafe you didn't bookmark, the view you didn't schedule, the conversation, the pause, the slower hour that would never have survived a fully optimized itinerary. The best trip isn't always the one where you see the most. Sometimes it's the one where you leave enough room to actually experience where you are.